So in 2002, I had the very great pleasure of being invited by Intrepid to travel with them on their first ever trans-Mongolian trip, which was Beijing to St Petersburg by train, which is like a third of the way around the world. It took 3 weeks. Beijing was a lot more open than it was previously, but still not as open as it is now. I had this beautiful experience that I went out from the hotel in Beijing one night taking photographs in the rain of buildings, and I think this is something that they'd never seen before, the people of Beijing. And so a security guard came over to me and gave me a dumpling in the middle of the night, which I thought was the most beautiful thing. Then from there it was to Mongolia. In order for the Chinese not to be able to invade Mongolia, they actually changed the gauge of the train track. If that makes sense. The train track gets narrower or wider, but it means the whole train has to be picked up and put down on a new set of wheels, which is pretty cool. Then we went to Mongolia. Mongolia is amazing. It's a wasteland, sadly. The Russians were there for a while, and there's some beautiful, as you'll see in these photographs, some beautiful Russian art and culture in Mongolia, but then they just left and the whole city's just falling apart. And this was all shot on film, so this was just 2002, it was just before digital came along, and so I was lucky enough to be photographing with my Nikon F5, and I think it was a Nikon F100 was what it was called. So I had one camera shooting black and white film and one camera shooting colour transparency film, otherwise known as slide film. So that was the last big project I probably did on film. Then from Mongolia it was off to Russia, to the USSR, which was always a little bit intimidating. It's a bit of a scary country, and as we crossed the border, the Russian soldiers came on the train, and they came into our car with their AK-47s, their big machine guns, their big Kalashnikovs, and that's full on, and they're pointing them at the bags, open the bags, because this was the first time that Intrepid had done this tour, so we were new, we were on the frontier in that respect. Then off we went to Lake Baikal, which is a lake about 4,000 kilometers east of Moscow, and it is the largest freshwater body in the world. We went out on boats, on icebreaker boats, and after we left Lake Baikal we went to Irkutsk. It's a good Russian word, isn't it? Irkutsk. And we went to a beautiful hotel, and we went down to the kind of the communication room back in the 2000s, early 2000s. There wasn't quite there were no smartphones, so you had to actually go to rooms to do your communication with the rest of the world. It was full of all these lovely Russian ladies. I was there with a travel companion. They decided to offer us vodka. And then the coolest thing in the world happened. They said, let's have Chinese food for dinner. So we had Russian Chinese food, which was the most bizarre thing ever. Got very, very drunk that night. And at some point, they all disappeared. And we were just kind of, the guy that I was with, his name was Ham. We were just kind of left there going, well, what are we going to do now? And I've got this great photo of us going back to our room, and there were two Russian ladies of the night coming out of the lift. We didn't order them, we didn't. So from Irkutsk, we got on the Trans-Siberian Railway, which is a train line that runs from Vladivostok to Moscow to St Petersburg. Vladivostok to Moscow is 5,000 kilometers. Can you imagine? It's as wide as Australia. And Irkutsk to Moscow is about 4,000 kilometers, and it does around 800 to 900 kilometers a day, which meant we had to be on the train for 5 days. So we were on this train non-stop, 4 nights, 5 days on the train, playing cards, eating salami, trying not to get food poisoning from the train car. They did say to us the food's not very good, and it's true, the food was not very good. We never stopped anywhere for long. It's not like a cruise ship where you stop for a day and get to go out and cruise around the city. No, you stop for 3 minutes and you were able to jump on the platform and buy things, but of course you're always very worried about making sure you get back on the train, otherwise the train's just gone. And then we arrived in Moscow, and then it was off to St Petersburg, the Winter Palace, the Summer Palace. It was all so beautiful, and the 3 weeks were over, and then we flew home, and then we, for Intrepid, submitted, like I said, I think I had 30 rolls of film, which would have been 1,000 shots. I reckon I had more like 2,000 shots. the part I was doing for Intrepid, they wanted 200 shots to be able to show people who were interested in that tour what it would look like. So 200 shots were sent to them. I was a bit of a shy young man back in the day. This was 20 years ago, almost, and I was probably a bit scared. But we hear it all the time. You've got to just take those risks and do those things and take those adventures. You never know what's going to come of it, but it was the trip of a lifetime.